Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Hannah OJ, and today I'm going to be reviewing, kind of giving my thoughts on, not really like a breakdown. I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the Harry Potter 20th anniversary special that was on HBO Max on the 1st of December, 1st of January, so New Year's Day. And I'd actually been looking forward to it, but kind of not getting my hopes up about it being good, because the way they marketed it, it was kind of similar to the Friends 20th anniversary special, which gave us absolutely nothing. It was literally just a way of the cast telling Friends fans like us to shut the fuck up and we're not getting a movie, so here you go. They were like, yeah, take. That's it. Like, you're done. Like, we're done with that. And it was just like, okay, cool. You didn't give us anything that we asked for, but fine. So I kind of, because they marketed it that way, like I think in the actual, announcement, they said it was going to be similar to that setup. I was like, okay, we'll see then. But I actually really, really enjoyed it. I'm sure Harry Potter nerds such as myself have already watched it, so I'm not going to be giving like a proper in-depth breakdown, but I do want to give my thoughts on the special because I did think it was good. I really, really liked the way they began it. It was a real theatrical production. I love the way it was very in keeping with the tone of Harry Potter. And it was, all of the rest of them, all of the cast members kind of in their different spots. And then they get the letter that looks like the letter from Hogwarts to invite them to the 20th anniversary special. I thought that was really cute. I was like, oh, that's nice. Aside from the beginning, I really, really liked the fact that they made Daniel Radcliffe walk around and interview not the entire cast, I guess the most iconic characters. I don't even want to say that because I feel like they left out one or two. But yeah, I really liked the way they had Daniel Radcliffe walk around the set and interview everyone. And it didn't even feel like the set. That's what I really liked about it. It actually felt like the actors had jumped back 20 years back in time, and they were just in Hogwarts, like in the Chamber of Secrets. Do they even do I don't think they did the Chamber of Secrets. That would have been cool. They should have interviewed Ralph Fiennes in the Chamber of Secrets. That would have been so dope. Oh my God. To be honest, I don't understand why they didn't give Ralph a longer interview. I was like, really, Voldemort? We only get a few a few clips. Like, that was odd to me because he's the villain of the story. Like, we don't get a little bit more time because I would have really liked to know how he put himself in the mindset of being such an evil villain, but still kind of having to make it kid friendly, even though the Voldemort scenes are pretty dark. Like, those are the kind of where for kids would probably get a bit scary. But I still feel like they did a good job of making it feel like a kid's film. So I watched The Chamber of Secrets and Prison of Azkaban when I was a kid, and I didn't feel any, I don't get scared easily. I didn't feel any kind of fear. So yeah, I think that I would have really loved to have a proper sit-down interview with... Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. But yeah, I really, really like the fact that they had Daniel Radcliffe walk around and interview all the cast in the different spots. Like, that was really dope. So they start with Chris Columbus, who directed the first two films, so Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets. So Harry's just... Oh my God, Daniel is just asking Chris how Harry Potter came about, like how it fell into his lap. And he basically explained that his daughter was begging him to read The Prison of Azkaban. He finally read it. And I think it's so cute that their parents actually listen to their kids and they actually read a book when they tell them to read a book. Like, that was so cute to me. I was like, oh my God, if I begged my parents to read a book, they would have just kissed their teeth and told me to find something else to do. Like, that is so sweet that you guys actually do what your kids tell you to or like want you to. But anywho, I think that he basically explained that his daughter got him into the books and he just started to piece, like, obviously he's a filmmaker. If you guys know, and one of his most famous films was Home Alone. So he's, at this point, he knows how to direct films, and he had a picture of what Harry Potter's world or the Wizarding world would look like, what Hogwarts would look like. He pictured it when he was reading the book, and he met J.K. Rowling in Edinburgh. He pitched it to her. She loved it, and then the rest is history. And I just thought it was really interesting to hear how many of the older actors and producers got into Harry Potter through their children. Like, Ralph Fiennes said that it was his sister's children that actually kind of convinced him to play Voldemort, because she was like, I don't really know about this. And they were like, oh my God, they want you to play Voldemort, you have to do it. And it was so cute, right? And Gary Oldman said it was his daughter that got into it. So it was just really interesting that these adults that knew really nothing about this story all of a sudden was kind of taking over everywhere, and the kids all like begging, like, you have to get involved kind of thing. And it's just interesting that it kind of makes you appreciate the work they did putting into their roles, because you forget that they really, really, as adults, like, us reading them as children and growing up with them is a different thing. But when you're an adult and having to fully get into the mindset of like, okay, to be fair, I think you would enjoy Harry Potter as an adult. I don't think it would feel like a kid's book reading it, but I can imagine that some things is like, okay, like less really like it, you'd have to probably apply a bit more pressure, I would say. So it makes you appreciate how much they gave to the role, considering that they really had to be like, okay, let me throw myself into this kid story kind of thing. I thought it was really, really interesting. Daniel Radcliffe's parents didn't want him to do it at first. I would have liked a little bit more detail on that, but I guess it's kind of self-explanatory. Daniel said, it was contracted to do all 7 films. I guess it was 7 films at the time. It's 8 now, obviously we know. But, I guess I was contracted. It would have been a contract to sign up to all 7 films, and it would all be filmed in LA. And my parents were like, no, like that is going to be a huge disruption to his life. Like, no way. And then they explained that David Heyman, the producer of all films, he actually convinced Daniel Radcliffe's dad to bring him in for an audition. And I was like, I wonder what he said to convince the parents, because I feel like you're either up for that kind of thing or you're really not, as parents. I could totally understand as parents that it's mad. Like, why would I want to subject my child to that? It's like, could be big for him, a lot of money, but it's crazy. Like, he's a kid, do you know what I mean? So I wonder if you have that stance, what would be the thing that convinced you? Do you think it was the money? You think it was the dollar signs? You think David Hume was like, sir? I mean, we talking big money here. Like, do you think it was that? Or do you think, because I feel like they would have already known that it would mean big money at the time. So I would wonder what would convince them to be like, okay, let's do this. Especially knowing that you can't just sign up to one film and see how it goes. He's Harry Potter. He has to be committed to all the films. They're not going to change the lead role halfway through, which is why they were clever enough to contract him to all 8 films. Interesting, it didn't seem like Emma Watson was held to the same contract, which is interesting. We'll go on to that. So then they cut to the scene in the Borough. So in the Borough, we see Mark Williams, who plays Arthur Weasley. We see James and Oliver Phelps, who play Fred and George. And is it just me, or do they look really good? I was like, oh, they've been at the gym. And I even white boys aren't even my preference, but I was just like, oh, okay. Especially James. I think James is the one with his hair trimmed, because one of them has longer hair. I prefer the one with the shorter hair. I was like, oh, you guys look good in suits. 20 years later, not bad. And Bonnie Wright, who plays Ginny Weasley. I have smoke for that actress, but I will be nice today. Not her personally. I'm sure she's a lovely woman. I hate what she did with Ginny. I'm so sorry. Ginny's such a fabulous character in the book, and in the film she's just so dry. And to be fair, it's not all her fault. It's partly the screenwriters as well. But anywho, one of these days I'll make a whole video about how much I hate the characterization of Ginny Weasley on screen. But yeah, like that. It was really cute how they were explaining how they had a really, really good time having their actual Weasley family. You can tell the way the cast members communicate and speak with each other. They're actual family. It makes sense. They spent how long working together, all the time. Only one another knows exactly how they're feeling and what they're going through. It's so obvious, they're close at this point. But it was just the way that Bonnie was I felt really lucky to have our Weasley family. We had the Harry Potter family, but we had our own. I was like, oh, that's so cute. And I guess that makes sense that you would have to feel like you got into the, it's method acting, isn't it? You have to get into the role. So they probably act like a family even when they're not filming. And having seasoned actors like Mark Williams and Julie Walters, who wasn't there. She was missed. She's one of the major actors I was referring to that was missed. I was like, oh, well, I'm guessing it was a point of not everyone being available, because I'm sure they would have invited Mrs. Weasley. Do you know what I mean? So I'm sure it was not everyone was free, which is fair enough. But I would have loved to have her there. And it was just really cute. And then they kind of compare and contrast with the Malfoy family, who are much darker, obviously. And then we see Jason Isaacs, who explains how he got the role as Lucius Malfoy, which I thought was hilarious. By the way, did you guys clock, anyone that watches Sex Education, that guy is the cunt who is Adam's dad's brother? Lucius Malfoy. I didn't even notice, because I don't know what that man looks like without his lace front wig. I do not. I have no idea what he looks like without that without the blonde platinum inches. I have no idea. And then I saw him, and someone said it on Twitter, and I was like, fuck off, that's Malfoy. And I looked out, I was like, no, that's him. I I was like, his face, that is him. I don't know why I didn't see it, because when you actually see, like, you can still see Lucius, but it's like, you just don't immediately go there. Anyway, but he's funny. Jason Isaacs, you can tell in real life he's a funny guy. And he was basically like, I remember auditioning for the role of Gilderoy Lockhart, because that's what I was going for. And I was like, okay, I could kind of see him do that too. And then he was like, and I did not want to go for the role of Lucius Malfoy. And they made me interview for it. And I was doing it like begrudgingly, basically, because I didn't want to do it. And he said, through gritted teeth, specifically. And he was like, and I think that's perfect for Lucius Malfoy. And that's why I got the part, basically. And I was like, lol, how hilarious. Because I could totally imagine like you being stubborn and really not wanting to do it and just fine, let's do it. And like, yeah, that's Lucius. that's Lucius. And yeah, just Tom Felton. Is it just me, or did Tom Felton look like he really didn't want to be there? Like it felt like he was just going through the pace, like, all right, cool, let's do this. What, 2 hours? Yeah, all right, cool. Like it just did not feel like my man wanted to be there at all. But like in any point when he was talking. But yeah, so he's explaining, you know, they're kind of giving a little bit of context to Malfoy's character, like Draco and Lucius. And Malfoy was like, or Tom Felton was like, yeah, if your dad's, you know, psycho, you know, wielding a cobra cane about, you're probably not going to be the nicest geezer. I'm like, yeah, that's literally, and it kind of opened the door. And what I always think about Malfoy is that he was essentially neglected and abused emotionally, really. Like, when I reread the books, it's easier to feel sorry for Malfoy now. You hate Malfoy the first few reads because you love Harry. To be fair, I don't actually like Harry that much. I like him, but I don't, if that makes sense. Like, we'll get onto that. But, because I'm realising as I'm doing this video, I'm going to give you guys so much more Harry Potter content because it's fun. Because it's just fun. But, yeah, you definitely have an easier time feeling sorry for Draco Malfoy after a while, because you realise he is a product of his environment. He is really like from a cold, you know, horrible family that only care about power and, you know, making other people feel shit and low and beneath them. They like feeling above people, you know? They are the, you know, that statue in the Ministry of Magic that they describe on the way in, that's like wizards sitting on top of house elves. In the Malfoy's mind, the house elves are like, you know, the Muggleborns and anyone that's like poor and half-blood, that's just beneath them, and they're the wizards. Like, that's how they see themselves. And obviously that kind of spills into Draco's personality, and that's kind of what they were speaking to. And Tom Felton kind of describes him and Jason Isaacs' relationship on set being a little bit toxic and not toxic, but like, he was like, you know, he'll be lovely to me 1 minute and then he'll be a complete cunt the next. Essentially is what he said. And I was like, yeah, Jason Isaacs was definitely trying to keep him on his toes. And you could tell like the older actors were definitely guiding the children a little bit. That's what I heard from a lot of these interviews, that the way they would behave even when they weren't filming, they were trying to keep them in their role because they're children and they can only be focused for so long, you know? So they really, really have to help, like, guide them. And I feel like that's what Jason Isaacs was probably doing. Like, they described, like, I don't know if you guys would have seen it because it's a deleted scene. I, as a Harry Potter nerd, I have all the films, so I watch all the deleted scenes all the time. And there's a scene in the Chamber of Secrets where Jason Isaacs, he like throws the cane over his hand. Draco's about to touch something. And apparently that was real. Like, it wasn't like in the script or anything. Jason Isaacs just did it and he really hurt his hand. I was like, oh my God, that was real? Because even when I watch it, I'm like, oh, imagine if that was a real hand. And it was. Oh my God, his hand definitely bled. He must have been in pain, boy. I was like, I hope you were easy on that poor child, but he was still a you know? But yeah, it was fun to see that. I'm really glad they did a deep dive into Sirius's character because he's one of my favourite characters in the whole series. So they had a huge focus on Alfonso Cuaron. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but he is the producer of The Prison of Azkaban, the director for The Prison of Azkaban, and they had Daniel Radcliffe interviewed Gary Oldman as well. I think Gary Oldman really, really plays Sirius Black brilliantly. I really, really like what he brought to the role, and I didn't even really realise it until I saw the special, but I really like what Alfonso brought to it as a director as well, because he said that when he read the book, Alfonso actually said when Harry turns 13, a dark cloud kind of emerges over him and around him. And we needed to convey that stylistically. And I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. That's exactly it as well. Because a lot of people, I think, look at the fourth film as the film that the darkness starts approaching, because that's really where you see the action happening. That's where you see, Cedric Diggory dying. That's when Voldemort comes back. That's where, the Order of the Phoenix is introduced. It introduces a lot of those layers. So for a lot of people, that's where it kind of starts getting real. For me, it's the Prisoner of Azkaban where it actually starts to emerge. The darkness it's almost like Harry's coming of age, kind of, because he's 13 now. I know 13 is still like a kid, but I feel like Harry, if you follow, if you really, really read the books, he is quite emotionally mature for his age because of what he's been through. So his mind at 13 is not really like 13. He's actually kind of becoming a man because he's making his choice. That's where he kind of starts to make his choices about what direction he wants to go in terms of it being good or evil kind of thing. Because, we find out what happens with Peter Pettigrew, his dad, and the Marauders and everything. And he kind of starts to piece together the history of what happened with Voldemort and his parents. So for me, that's where the dark, and he starts to see visually and hear what they went through when Voldemort wanted to kill them. So for me, the Dementors and Harry's turmoil and conflict, that brings up about the darkness. And I just thought it was so extraordinary that Alfonso really understood that from reading the book, because so far what I'd gotten from the directors, including the director of the fourth film, Mike Newell, they kind of only had I won't say only because, they can only obviously give a few lines, but it sounded like they were thinking of their role as a director and just what is this world going to look like, but not really, really zeroing on Harry as the main character. Alfonso seemed like he really did that, because in The Prisoner of Azkaban, if you think about it, it's raining nearly all the time, it's dark nearly all the time, it's very much mirroring Harry's mood and the Dementors constantly around, but also the theme of the book. So it completely makes sense that he's done the film in that way. And I just thought it was brilliant. I was like, wow, and that's why these specials are actually really, really, really good to watch, because they make you appreciate the film so much more and the role of which every director, every producer, screenwriter, cast member has taken on. Because when I saw that back, it made me realize why the third film is one of my favorites, because he captured the theme perfectly, in my opinion. So I couldn't hear this part properly, but it sounded like Alan Rickman was the only one who had the inside from JK and knew what was going to happen with his character in the books, because I forgot at the time they would have been filming Prisoner of Azkaban, because it was Gary Oldman that he was speaking to when he said it. They would have JK wouldn't have written all the books yet. She was not even finished with the Half-Blood Prince. So Snape, no one knew at this point what Snape was about, like what that was really going to bring. So I was like, oh my God, how did he convince? Because I'm assuming a lot of them asked her. And she said no. So I'm like, how did Alan Rickman manage to convince her to tell him? He seems like a sly man like that. Rest in peace. I love Alan Rickman. He really when you hear about celebrities' deaths and there's some that really he's one. I'm like, oh my God, really? But yeah, I was like, how the fuck did he manage that? I just thought that was an interesting little gem. So with the fourth one, they leaned a lot into the director of the fourth film, which is Mike Newell. They said they needed the theatrics, they needed it to be very British tone, so they needed a British director, because at that point, they'd had Chris Columbus, who was American. They had Alfonso, who was Mexican. So they really wanted to make it have a British vibe for the fourth one, which makes sense because of it being the Tri-Wizard tournament. And in the book, the introduction of certain of the new characters, you would expect them to be very British, old-fashioned men. So I get where their idea was with that. But then if they were going to skip out so many of those elements anyway, it kind of was it made no difference, but cool. The fourth film, for me, the focus on it, I didn't enjoy, because I can't stand the fourth film. It's the worst film for me, simply because of what they leave out. Because The Goblet of Fire was one of my favourite books. So the best parts of the story are all skipped out of the film, for me personally. The Goblet of Fire book is really good. It introduces the dark side of the wizarding world. It introduces all the politics and, you know, the classism that's introduced via the Ministry Wizards, where we see what happens with Winky and Dobby and the house elves and the way they're treated. Hermione embarking on her campaign with Spew. It kind of gives you a bit more of a background and context to how wizards feel where it comes to their counterparts that are not human, basically, like the elves, goblins, even werewolves, like Lupin, you know, like it really makes you see, even in the third book a little bit, that's kind of introduced where it's, you know, the stigma on Lupin being a werewolf. That's introduced slightly, but you don't really see it in plain view because you don't understand that Lupin is good really until the very end of the book. So it doesn't really like hit your brain. But in the fourth one, you really, really see the classism and the little remnants that are very much mirror our society today. So all of those things are completely skipped out of the fourth one. So for me, I more want to know why things weren't in it as opposed to why things were, like why this was here. I don't care because I don't like the fourth film anyway. Like, for me, you can't fault the cinematography, the special effects. Like, Harry Potter kills that. Like, you can never go wrong where it comes to that. So the fourth film, they did the Triwizard Tournament task really well. Well, the first one. The second one was good too. The third one, the maze was good. I'm just nitpicking now. Sorry, I was going to go into details, but I'm not even going to bother because I'll be here all day. But yeah, the tasks were good, I would say. But the fourth film is literally like, why am I watching this? Because nothing I like about the story is in here. So yeah, I would have more liked to hear answers as to why they left things out as opposed to why things were in there. Sorry, I really hate fourth film. Can you tell? Like, sometimes I watch it and I wonder, like, aren't the viewers who don't read the books, aren't they confused? Because the way they've laid it out in the film actually doesn't make any sense. Like, don't even get me started on Harry finding Mr. Crouch dead in the forest and we just never talking about it, like it didn't happen. Oh, I don't even. Let me move on. I would have loved them to interview David Tennant because as little as he had on screen, he could have had more if they were accurate to the book, but I digress. As little as he was on screen, I thought he really, really gave a lasting impression for his portrayal of Barty Crouch Jr. And I would have loved to hear from him. Or even Bernard Gleeson, who I believe is the man who played Mad-Eye Moody. Like, the majority of the film is focused on them. So it's a bit like we didn't really, hear from them. But again, it could have just been a matter of who was available. And Ralph Fiennes, like, why did we not get, I mentioned this before, but why did we not get a proper in-depth interview? I would have loved to know exactly how he got into the mindset of an evil villain like Voldemort. It was even really interesting to see. To be fair, I will now start watching the specials because I've watched, like, obviously a few behind the scenes as a kid when I'd watched the actual films at the time and forgotten about it now. But as an adult, I haven't really sat down and watched loads of behind the scenes stuff of Harry Potter. But now I'm really like watching the anniversary special and then going back to, because I was in the middle of a Harry Potter marathon anyway, and I was in the middle of the Order of the Phoenix and going back to it, it actually makes you appreciate certain things a lot more. And as someone who loves the books and is not hugely fanatic about the films, I think that that's going to be good for me. So I'm going to start doing that now. But I would love to see if there's some more focused interviews on Ralph Fiennes and how he got into the character. And because even the little things like how they designed Voldemort was really interesting to me. And it just made me realize how important it is to have a different role for everybody. How important it is to have so many different people put in their part into this huge production, because you really, really get to focus on the important elements and bring them to life in the way that's needed. Because that is Voldemort. That's exactly what you picture. And Mike Newell, I don't know if he was kind of taking credit for what Chris Columbus had already kind of laid out, because he was saying that he kind of came up with Voldemort's imagery and him not looking human. And I was like, firstly, JK essentially described him looking that way. And secondly, Chris Columbus had already kind of made him look like that in the first one, where he was, popping out of Quirrell's head. And I know that you could have easily changed it because, it's a man on someone else's head. So you can make it look different when he's in his own body. I get it. But I feel like that's what Voldemort looked like then. So it's kind of like, I don't know if you could take complete, I don't know if he meant to do that. Maybe he was, maybe am I biased because I don't like the film? Am I just being not nice to this guy now? Sorry. But when he said that, I was a bit like, did you completely design it though? Okay, whatever. Or did you come up with it completely? Whatever. But yeah, I would like to know a little bit more. I would like to hear more from Ralph Fiennes. But spoiler, like they told us, he does have a nose. It's just stickers to make it not look like he has. Very, very clever. I was like, interesting. I assume that it was some kind of weird thing he put on his nose to make it look like. But yeah. And, oh God, Voldemort was so gross. Because when I was watching the fourth one the other day, and you know that part where he's like, I can touch you now to Harry. You see his, you see his nose. And it's like flares and it looks proper gross. You're like, ew, well, his lack of a nose. And it's like, oh God, you're nasty. And then there's a random part, which is so random. I don't know why they slid it in here in the fourth one. I guess because they were talking about hormones being everywhere and stuff. And people finally seeing Hermione as a woman when she comes down the stairs at the Yule Ball. They randomly said that Tom Felton and Emma Watson were really close. I guess that's why there used to be so many couple fan videos of them. I used to get so confused about that when I was a fan reading the books at the time. I was like, why is everyone putting Hermione and Draco together? Don't make me sick. What is going on here? That must be why. Maybe it was fans that saw that the actors were close. But yeah, that they were talking about how like from day one they loved each other. I think for me, as a woman, I could tell Emma Watson had a crush. She was crushing hard and he friend-zoned her from day one and she's still a bit salty about it, I think, because that's what it sounded like to me. I was like, I would love to hear more tea on that as well. Like, come on, you man grew up together. You're on set all the time, like you said, hormones everywhere. Some of you fucked. Come on, give me the tea. I want to know tea. Like, I want to know. But anywho, they did not give us the tea, obviously. But where it comes to Tom Felton and Emma Watson's relationship, she was saying like he was 3 years older than her when they met. So, you know, he was like, oh, you're like my sister kind of thing. I was like, oh, sis, shame. And, you know, I understood completely because Emma Watson being such a feminist, and she definitely gives me the vibe of someone who was like that from a kid. She said like they had an assignment where they had to draw God and Tom drew like a girl with a backwards cap on a skateboard. And she was just like, bestie. And I was like, yeah, sounds about you. Yeah. I can totally see that. And to be honest, I get it. I get the attraction now. A woman, a man, or even a boy, especially a little boy, honestly, drawing God and him thinking of a woman or a girl, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And I understand the vibe now. But yeah, I think Emma held a little candle for Tom and he never returned, which is sad. But in a way, I'm kind of happy about it because I would not have liked to see real life. Like in my head, it's Malfoy and Hermione and it would just be wrong. I'm sorry. Helena Bonham Carter. So of course, Helena Bonham Carter, we have to have the special with her. Like, just don't fucking bother if she's not available, if you ask me. I'm not even, as much as I love Helena Bonham Carter, I don't even have much to say about her because her work and her performance as Bellatrix Lestrange literally speaks for itself. Like, she's just always giving. And Bellatrix is no exception. And I thought it was really, really cute to see her and Daniel go back and forth. She definitely gives me the vibe of someone that, you know, would have been kind to him and they would have, yeah, had a good relationship. And I was like, oh, this is nice. Like, this is really sweet and stuff. Because she read a little letter that he wrote her when they wrapped up filming and stuff. I was like, oh, they're so cute. So Bellatrix. Helena spoke a lot about being able to have freedom with her role as Bellatrix Lestrange and being able to be playful with it because, well, that's her. That's Bellatrix Lestrange. She's an evil, twisted bitch. Dumbledore even has a line in the book about Bellatrix liking to play with her food before she eats it. So I could definitely imagine one, because I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid. Maybe this is why I'm so passionate about films. But I recall when you had to play a bad guy, it was so much more fun. So I could imagine having fun with a role like Bellatrix Lestrange and really being able to be playful. I thought it was really cool that they told us that there was one time where, because Tom was saying how weird it is now to look back on how they were doing all these elaborate wand work and elaborate gestures with their wands and nothing actually happening, which is mad when you think about it. And then she was like, no, one time it did for me, because she described when the scene where she blew up the Borough house, which is interesting. I like when they put scenes in the film that aren't in the book. It shows the creative license of the director and you know what they feel like is needed. Because I actually really like that scene in the Half-Blood Prince that is not in the book. And when she blew up the Borough house, they actually said they were going to take cue from her. So when Helena points her wand at the house, we're going to blow it up. And they showed us back then. So that part where Bellatrix is jumping up and down, like all playful and like, ooh, like after she blocked the house, that's real. That's really Helena Bonham Carter be like, oh my fucking God, that was so fucking sick. Like, it must have felt so good. Could you imagine how powerful that was? Like, boom, like, oh my God, especially after like a year of playing a witch, you would start to like, it would start to fuck with your mind, be like, no, this shit is real. I'm really doing this shit. Like, this is I would literally like pressure be like, no, it was us. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. When I tell my friends and family, it's gonna be me that did that. I also thought it was really funny when Jason Isaacs said that he would try to have to work really hard to control the scene, and basically Helena could just do whatever the fuck she wanted. She'd just be laughing and like rolling around, like running around everywhere, and he would just like, shut up, like having like a really hard time trying to control the scene. And it was just funny to me because I was like, I feel like that's exactly what Lucius and Bellatrix would be given though. Like, I feel like even that scene in the Department of Mysteries where Bellatrix is doing the most, that's exactly how the scene is in the book. Bellatrix is doing the most and Lucius is like, shut the fuck up. So when Jason said that, I was like, no, but you guys were giving though. Like, that was what was needed. So then they moved on to David Yates, who directed the majority of the remaining Harry Potter films from Order of the Phoenix to The Deathly Hallows Part 2, so until the final one. One of the most interesting parts about this section that stood out to me was Emma Watson saying that she was seriously contemplating dropping out just before the 5th one, I think. And I was really, really interested in that. I'd heard that before. I had heard that she, you know, been having feelings of depression and anxiety around the time she was filming Harry Potter, but I never really knew exactly why. And she kind of confirmed in the special that was because, you know, she was lonely. Like, she read a diary entry and she was like, oh yeah, I wasn't really happy at that stage. Like, there were times that I was lonely. And I was kind of like, why? Like, it seemed to me that, because when Tom Felton explained that Dan and Rupert had each other, he had his cronies. When he said cronies, I was like, does he mean Crabbe and Goyle? Are they his real friends? Like, I was just like, who are his cronies? Like, whatever. And then she was like, yeah, like Emma was kind of wandering around by herself. And it literally just, I won't say it triggered me, but it kind of brought me back to like when I was growing up and I had a phase when I was a teenager and most of my close friends were like mainly boys. And boys they lack such emotional intelligence. It's actually really painful for a girl that is close to that doesn't have many like girlfriends that she's close to and it's mainly boys. It does feel very lonely and it does feel like they don't give a fuck about you basically, because boys just lack so much emotional intelligence when they're younger, especially even when they're older, for fuck's sake. We have to, you know, teach them, we have to say so much until we're blue in the face. Well, I don't go blue in the face, but you know what I mean. And to really make men get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, they just really, like, they really you have to break it down for them when it comes to emotional stuff. And Dan did kind of go on to explain that, you know, as a 14-year-old boy, I'm just not going to turn around to a 14-year-old girl and be like, hey, how are you doing? And I do understand that. Even as teenage girls, we don't have, like, kids are mean, you know? Like, we just don't have the emotional intelligence that's I won't say that's needed because, you know, we don't have it because we're growing into it, you know? But it would be, it's rough on the more sensitive kids, you know? And for me, I didn't understand why Emma was wandering around alone, because Tom said that he loved her from day one and they were really good friends. So if you have identified that your friend was lonely, why didn't you, like, I'm just a bit like, boys are so shit. Like, I just don't understand. And like, even when Emma was saying in the end, it was friends who like really, really wanted the best for me and supported me that motivated me to continue and to come back. And like, how great is that? So she essentially was saying like, it was her support system at home that motivated her to go back. And I just thought, like, what kind of craziness is that? Because I'm sure if the director was aware that she's leaving, I am sure, like, money kind of depends on this decision, because it's going to fuck things up if we have to pick another Hermione. The fans won't like it, even if she's better. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, changing a main character is such a risky thing to do in such a big franchise like Harry Potter. I'm sure the directors or the producers would have sat Dan and Rupert down and been like, you know, speak to her, you know, like, make her feel like, well, like, they're adults, they can identify on these kind of things and think, maybe she isn't happy because of this, maybe she isn't happy because she doesn't feel like she has many friends, or like, not friends, but like, you know, people that she can actually hang around with all day and share this experience with, because it is a very male heavy cast. And I didn't even really notice that until they were discussing this. And I was just like, oh, like, I don't understand. I don't see how they wouldn't have had this conversation with Daniel and Rupert to, like, you know, kind of be a little bit, and maybe they did do that and it just didn't help because she didn't have that bond with them. Maybe the bond which she had with friends is what, you know, motivated her to continue. But I was just like, that's so crazy to me that essentially what it sounds like is that you guys are colleagues. You were never really like that close. That's what I got from it. Because I think Daniel and Rupert are still close and Emma's kind of not really. And even she talked about Bonnie and Ivana and Katie Long, who plays Cho Chang, being such incredible women now, and how she's so proud of them. That made me feel like she started making proper friends in the cast in the 5th book, when Luna was introduced, when Cho was introduced properly, because obviously Cho's in the 4th one, but, you know, maybe she didn't spend that much time with her at that stage, or whatever. Or maybe she did, and, you know, she just, who knows, it's a huge film set with a lot going on. Maybe they just didn't get much time to talk. And who else I say? And Bonnie, obviously, she was already there from being Ginny, so I guess she would have had Bonnie. But I don't know, it sounded to me like she was lonely a lot. I'm not even sounded to me, she literally said she was lonely. And I just feel like people have their things that they're going through, and they might have, maybe I'm wrong, like maybe the boys did extend their hands to, like, maybe they did try and get her involved and she didn't want to, like, I don't know. But from what my experience is, growing up, you know, having a lot of my close friends at the time around boys, I do feel like a lot of those experiences, those years, have led to me having to really, really work hard to understand my anxiety and why I feel the way I feel about things, and why certain things trigger me. Because at the time, the people that I would call my closest friends didn't care. When I would explain it to them and try and speak to them about it, they would gaslight me and act like I'm, you know, I have no reason to be upset. Even when it came down to like the bare minimum, like the way they would speak to me and the way they treat me, like I'd have to explain to them, like, I'm not a guy. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't like being spoken to like this. Like, you can't, and they just wouldn't get it. And like, obviously now as I'm older, I'm realizing like they just weren't good friends, period. Like, I know that has a lot to do with it. It's not always about, you know, it is. I do feel like even when I have male friends now, I don't go to them with certain things. Do you know what I mean? Like, women are just a lot easier to be understanding and to have a shoulder to lean on when it comes to that kind of thing. And that's just of my experience. So that's what I got from that. And it just made me feel like, oh, Emma, that's really sad. And I just kind of feel like I don't really get why she was in that position. But hey. And don't get me wrong, I know we can't really expect much from teenage boys, but even when Rupert and Emma were having the conversation in the special, Rupert said, I've never really spoken to you about you wanting to drop out. I said, you've never spoken to her about it? So I guess I'm wrong then. So maybe the producers didn't speak to them about trying to convince her to stay. Because that's what I would do if I was a director or producer. I'd be like Dan, Rupert, you know, really, really make Emma feel like she has a place here kind of thing, because she clearly doesn't feel that way right now. Like, you know, really like make sure she's involved with the games and stuff and whatever you guys are doing when you're not filming. Like, really, really make her feel welcome. Make her feel like your sister. Like, literally make a Harry, Ron, Hermione situation in real life. That's what I would tell them to do. So I guess no one told them to do that. But I'm just like, how have you never, as an adult, spoken to her about it? Like, because I understand that sometimes you don't understand where you're going wrong when you're a kid. But when you grow up and you realize, like, shit, because people do that, you know. People do approach people and be like, wow, that was wrong the way I treated you back then. I should have done that. I know I've done that with one of my friends. So, yeah, like, I just find that very odd. But again, men, I changed that from boys to men because I only have marginally more faith in men than I have in boys. So it's like, ugh. It is what it is. Even after this, I spent a lot of time trying to gauge how close Rupert and Emma were. Because I feel like Dan and Emma were close. But I couldn't really figure out with Rupert and Emma, because from that description, it didn't sound like they were much more than friendly colleagues. But then when they filmed the scene with the three of them at the common room, the last part of the special, Emma kind of described a non-verbal trust the three of them had built within one another where it came to filming by the time it came to the last two. I think they were specifically talking about things like stunts though. So maybe she meant in terms of the physicalities of filming and just, you know, how in tune we were with each other as actors as opposed to as friends. But I would say that having that kind of bond and connection would make you closer to that person as a friend. I would assume. If I trust you I don't want to say with my life, but that's kind of how it feels doing a dangerous stunt, I would imagine. I'm trusting you with my life in this moment, ish. I would say that will build up a pretty strong bond. I don't know, and I think there's love there, because I could feel that when Rupert said I love you as a friend, like, just to be clear, like, I could feel that there genuinely is a love between the two of them. But I don't know if it's a love like we are friends to this day, like he is with Dan, or if it's like that was a moment, that was a time that we had that we can never get back. Only we'll understand what we went through, and I love you because of the experiences that we had, but we're not friends. That's kind of what I got from it. And that's absolutely fine, because I'm like, the reason why I'm kind of picking at that is I feel like, what happened? Like, like for me, Harry, Ron, Hermione, filming for as long as they filmed, and we're not friends after, I don't fuck with you. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's where that's what I'm getting at. And I want to know the tea. I'm a little bit messy sometimes, guys. I want to know. But yeah, that was it really. And I think I will highlight as well that I really like that no, it wasn't Ivana Lynch. It was Bonnie Wright, actually, who highlighted that J.K. Rowling wrote such amazing female characters. And she did so much depth in the female characters that she's written. I think that because it's a very male-heavy cast. And I think that she's purposely made more male characters and less female to be able to give life to the female characters that they deserve, I think. Because you know, considering J.K. is so passionate about women, it is weird that when you look at it sometimes from a distance, that there's only a certain amount of female characters in comparison to the men. But I think for the story she was telling, there had to be a lot of men, and also it gives you license as a writer to make the women as nuanced and layered as you want them to be, you know? Another thing is, I would have loved to ask Alfred Enoch for details on how it felt to be pretty much the only black cast member of Harry Potter that actually had a name. Because obviously there was a few extras here and there, but yeah, he was the only named. Like, Lee Jordan in the book is meant to be black. I think he is technically in the film. I think he's the announcer for the first film. Like the Quidditch match, it has to be him, because that's exactly how they describe him in the book. But they never say his name in the film, so it's like nobody, the viewers don't know, that don't read the books. So yeah, I'm sure they have some stories for us, the minorities who were on the cast of Harry Potter. Even Katie Lung started speaking out about the discrimination, the racism that she got being Cho Chang. There was I Hate Katie page, because the white bitches just couldn't take the fact that Harry liked an Asian woman. Like, oh my God. So yeah, I would have loved to hear details about that from him, but obviously we weren't going to get that from this special. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised and happy with the special overall. I definitely think it gave me a few gems that I was content with. But ultimately, it didn't distract me from the fact that they are doing the 20th anniversary special of these films with the creator of the stories absent. And maybe this is just how I feel as a writer, but it just feels wrong. And don't get me wrong, one of these days I will unpack J.K. Rowling and her, you know, her transphobic tweets, because while I can understand that, I don't think her intention might not, she might not intend to be transphobic, but she is being transphobic. So I'm not going to stand here or sit here and say that she is right in what she's saying, because she isn't. Some of the things that she said are coming across very ignorant and very harmful and damaging to the trans community, and I totally understand that. I do think on the side of that, she has made valid points that I feel like cisgender women shouldn't feel scared to raise, if that's how they feel, because I feel like we're allowed to ask questions, you know? But where her stance is transgender women are not women, that is transphobic. So I completely understand a lot of the cast members' decisions to not affiliate themselves with her any longer. I totally get it, because if that's not what you stand for, that's not what you stand for. And sometimes you just have to make a decision and based firmly on your values. And I completely respect and appreciate that. And I think that's how we should all be. However, it feels contradictory to say, I don't want to involve myself with J.K. Rowling or her anymore, but you're still going to do this 20th anniversary special. I'm very much in the mind of two things can be wrong. Two things can be See how I'm getting confused? Two things can be right. Sorry. I'm very much in the mindset of two things can be right at the same time where it comes to this. Yes, J.K. Rowling is completely wrong and she is being transphobic whether she intends to or not. However, I don't agree with the decision that they've made to have this special and have the, like, completely X her out of it. Like, to the point where they're going to take clips from a 2019 interview from Warner Brothers and put it in the special. So you're going to admit that you feel like you can't not include her thoughts at all, considering she's the original creator of these stories. You've admitted that by putting those clips in there. But then why do it? Like, I understand money, fans, but it's just kind of like, let it be what you said it is. Do you know what I mean? Completely separate yourself from her. That means don't do any Harry Potter shit. Or not even that, actually. It's not even really don't do any Harry Potter shit, because you can. But it's just this 20th anniversary special to celebrate Harry Potter, the birth of the Harry Potter stories. It's very odd to have the creator absent, in my opinion. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. I think that's what it is. So it's not necessarily don't do any more Harry Potter shit, but it's just something like this where you would expect the author to be present is very odd to me, to be happy to attach yourselves to that. I don't know. I just feel like, And maybe it's not necessarily the individual cast members' fault, because would they have had a choice? I don't know. I'm sure it's not in their contracts that they have to do a 20th anniversary special, so I'm sure they had a choice. But ultimately, it's not them who came up with the decision to have a 20th anniversary. It would have been the producers. It would have been, it wouldn't have been them. So I get it. I just keep, every time I think about it, I'm like, it's just so contradictory and it doesn't make any sense. If you don't fuck with JK, don't fuck with JK. That means just act like her books didn't happen until it's time for Christmas again. I don't know. I felt like it was wrong. I wouldn't be happy if I was J.K. Rowling, but I don't know how she feels about it. She hasn't said anything. She's probably still getting her paper from it, so she probably don't really care. But I would be like, this is some bullshit that you're actually congregating to celebrate my stories without me. Okay. A final thing I'll end with is watching these specials has really made me appreciate the films more. As a reader who always appreciated the books more, I haven't really loved the films like that. Honestly, I watch the films because they're the quickest and easiest way of bringing Harry Potter to life right in front of you on screen. And, nostalgia, Christmas, that's why I watch the films. But I do feel like watching these specials are actually going to give me a newfound respect and appreciation for the films, because as soon as I went, because firstly it makes you realise that they can't include everything in these films, because that's mainly why I don't like a lot of them, because they skip so many of the stuff. But it's like they can't include everything, unfortunately, and some of the most complicated layered stories are going to take longer to explain on screen sometimes, so they have to cut out certain things because the films are already quite long, and they already made the last film into two films, last book into two films, so I get it. They did the best they could. I still feel like they could have done a better job with the fourth one, but they did the best that they could. I get it. And it also makes you appreciate because it makes you see things differently as well, because when I finished it, I went back to Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, and it was one of the scenes where Harry Potter was having the dream about Voldemort in the Department of Mysteries. And I was looking at Harry's or Daniel Radcliffe's complexion as he was, where he does that thing where he's like itching or whatever, like you can tell his scar hurts or whatever, or he's getting that flash of Voldemort's thought kind of thing. Yeah, it's just one of those moments. And I was looking at his complexion, and I don't know whether it was the lighting or whether it was just me, but I never picked up on this before. His skin looked really waxy, in comparison to what it usually looked like. And at first I thought it was sweat because he was dreaming. But I was like, no, because even before he's sleeping, the scene where he's just standing up in his uniform, his skin looks really waxy. And I'm like, did they do that to liken his skin to Voldemort to show the connection? And then obviously in the dream, you see them kind of blend together. And it made me think, oh yeah, that is one of the things that they did really well in the films, I will admit. They really, really did a good job of showing his inexplicable connection to Voldemort that we don't really understand until the end. They really, really they did a good job with that, I think, because those kind of things is where it's in your head, it's a little bit difficult to piece together. You're really just going to picture Harry. So you as a viewer seeing the conflict of the two of them kind of weaving in and out of each other, it's like, yeah, that's brilliant. That's really, really good the way they did that. And it's making you have a newfound respect for what they've done, I think, in terms of creating the films. So yeah, I enjoyed. And you guys let me know what you thought, leaving a comment below. I think I'm gonna have a lot more Harry Potter content for you because I had so much fun doing this. And I love Harry Potter. I reread the books and re-listen to the audiobooks all the time. I have so many different interesting and funny perspectives that, yeah, I think it's time to share with the world. And so follow me on all platforms at I am Hannah OJ. Yeah, so just let me know what you thought, guys. I'm still a baby girl in this business, so I could use your feedback and your thoughts, but be nice. If you want to be mean, you can DM me. Yeah, I really, really appreciate you guys checking this out. And yeah, Knox, the real ones will know.